Okay, welcome to the Bucky call for this weekend, May 20th or 21st, depending on what continent you are, and we're convinced that the sun is coming up in Cape Town. So we're going to begin this call. Joe, how are you feeling tonight, and what do you expect to get out of the call?
Feeling good. Back home. It was a long day. Journeyed through a lot of airports, so I'm a little bit tired, but it's great to be here with everybody. Happy birthday, Manu. You have to be at least 25 at this point, so I was just wondering. It's great to see you, and thank you for sharing about schools. We were talking about schools last week, and I think that that was a really important topic, and I hope we come back to it in some way, shape, or form. So my expectation is to build on what we were talking about last week. So it's great to hear and see everyone. So Manu, how are you feeling? Happy birthday and belated birthday. And what would you like to take away from today?
Thank you very much. I'm just emerging, really struggling to getting up. But anyway, I'm here. I'm late, but I found you guys in a very interesting conversation, and as usual, sharing a lot of interesting things. And that's it. That's life. That's the life that is becoming. If we're not aware, or maybe we got to do some little tucking and readjust and get into the mainstream of things that are happening that didn't happen before during our lifetime, but are happening. So I hope I'm in that frame now, and I'm ready, to get into the rumble and share and really this these ideas that we'll be discussing that really are so critical today, in my point of view, to helping us to really have a perspective and really position ourselves in a way that can help us navigate treacherous waters and help others do so around us. That's what I hope that we're going to continue doing here. And I also hope that everybody is going to be open, equanimous, without prejudice, and without strong opinion. I learned yesterday that it was somebody saying that never say I can do, but say I've not yet done. I've not done it yet. So that's where I am. And how do you feel? What do you expect?
Thank you, Manu. Okay, I so look forward every Sunday to this meet, always. And I'm always sharing a lot of things that we are attempting to do here in Malaysia, and I can tell you that a lot of them, these ideas and the
Time gets frozen.
Oh, okay. Right. Yeah.
Who's frozen? What?
Sorry?
Everything's
Nobody was frozen to me.
Yeah.
Okay. So yeah. So actually, I got a lot of courage from doing a lot of things. Actually, from meeting and having running ideas and just speaking and getting so much from all of you. So I'm very grateful. So let's see what comes out from today. And Joe, how do you feel? And what would you like to take away today?
Oh, I already went. So Richard would be next.
So Richard, sorry. Hi, Richard. And how do you feel? And what would you like to take away today?
Hi, everybody. Sorry, I'm a little bit late here. Well, now right now I feel very good. We were facing an airline pilot's strike right up until Friday, and we're leaving tomorrow morning for Mexico. So It was a little bit touch and go, but they settled. I'm feeling very good as well because Wednesday was our 60th wedding anniversary, so that was a good feeling day. And that was Thursday, and on Wednesday, I presented to a newcomers group of refugees and immigrants with my whole system Kumu sort of hybrid model, which was a good test of the holistic thinking and how it might be applied in an actual practicing agency that's trying to be helpful to people coming from war-torn countries or refugee status for other kinds of reasons. So that's how I'm feeling today. And I understand that's everybody. It's
Right.
back to you, Steve.
All righty, thank you. Good to see you all here. I'm feeling very good. I look forward to these calls too. It seems like last week I had an assignment from my daughter to do a letter. I mentioned this last week, to do a letter for my 17-year-old granddaughter who's graduating from high school. And my daughter thought of creating a card that had some inspirational thoughts in it that everybody in the family could write down a couple things that have been meaningful to them. So, she got 2 or 3 quotes from all these people in the family. And I said, and after the call last week, I was so inspired, I wrote a 2.5-page letter before I went to sleep that night. Because I'll tell you, with AI coming in right now, she's 17, and I talk about how, the idea that there's this Moore's law concept or Wright's law about, memory doubling in computers, and the idea that human knowledge has doubled right now they say that information at least is doubling every 12 hours on the internet because people are just dumping everything out there. And so life can be confusing. What I told my granddaughter was that knowledge hasn't doubled. Knowledge has always been the same. And there are 5 basic principles of life. Number 1, I am unique. I am me. I have my DNA, and whatever else is going on, I can do my thing. And so anyway, I outlined 5 things for her, 2.5-page letter. So my daughter's changing the thing now. She's going to have all these cards from everybody, and then she's putting an envelope in the back of the thing with my 2.5-page letter in there about life. And it was all inspired by this call. I think that if Bucky were alive today and he saw AI coming in like it's coming in between large language models, and then we got Stephen Wolfram and we have Elon Musk who are actually looking at different ways to create artificial intelligence. I think that we really are on the verge of what Bucky was talking about, and not because the institutions and the world has become so enlightened that it wants to see every human being treated like a sovereign individual and receiving, every human being is a billionaire. It's because all these institutions are just falling apart, and kids are starting to create their own world. And I love hearing Anne talk about her projects at her school and how she's creating these entrepreneurs in her school environment. That is really the future, and the kids are just doing fine, and the old institutions are dying. And I love reading Critical Path because I think it's really possible that Bucky's dream could finally be happening right now. So I'm grateful for the inspiration this group gives me, and I'm looking forward to further inspiration from Bucky and from this group as we share Critical Path. Cool beans. I'm complete. So we'll go over to do some reading tonight. And we're continuing on Critical Path we're still in the introduction on page 36 of the introduction. And we left off right here. I've been having some issues with my computer. I left myself a note how to resolve the problems. But here we go. And I like the idea of rotating around and giving everybody a chance. The guy who reads doesn't necessarily get to comprehend. And so if I'm reading, I'm creating a public service. And if we rotate it around, then people get to read and people get to comprehend. If you don't want to read, just put a little note in the chat, say, skip me. And otherwise, we'll just rotate around. Joe, how about if we start with you? and we start right below that yellow heading. And
Sure.
I'm going to make it a little bit bigger, although it's probably visible. I have the ability to go a little bit bigger, and there we go.
Oh, okay.
Let's just read like 2 or 3 paragraphs and then pause for a second, see what we want to throw in. And yet I'm all for reading as much as we can. So go for it. Whoops.
Okay, critical path. Oh,
There we go.
all right, there we go. Critical path comprehensively traces all the important trends of history that have led to this moment of humanity's potential first stage success and its opening of a whole new chapter of humanity's ever functioning in local support of the integrity of eternally regenerative universe. To know now what we could never have known before 1969, that we now have an option for all humanity to make it successfully on this planet in this lifetime, is not to be optimistic. It is only a validation of hope, a hope that had no operationally feasible validity before 1969. Whether it is up to be utopia or oblivion will be a touch and go relay race right up to the final moment. The race is between a better informed, hopefully inspired young world versus a running scared, misinformedly brain conditioned older world. Humanity is in final exam as to whether or not it qualifies for continuance in universe as mind, with the latter's access to the design laws called by science the generalized principles, governing eternally regenerative universe. Human minds have a unique cosmic function not identifiable with any other phenomenon, the capability to act as local universe information harvesters and local universe problem solvers in support
Well, he seems
of what? What? Did I freeze?
No, good.
Okay, problem solvers in support of the integrity of eternally regenerative universe. At the present cosmic moment, muscle, cunning, fear, and selfishness are in powerful control of human affairs. We humans are here in universe to exercise the universe functioning of mind. Only mind can apprehend, abide by, and be led by truth. If human mind comes into control of human affairs, the first thing it will do is exercise our option to make it. If you
I
read
want to pause right there for a second.
Okay.
Let's just pause because he's covered a couple of things there. He makes a differentiation between mind and brain really clearly, don't you think? Isn't that one of the conversations there?
That's huge. Yeah, I mean, and there is a battle that goes on, where people think, brain is nothing more than a manifestation of the mind. So, or the mind is nothing more than a manifestation of the brain. Forgive me. And that's, I don't believe that.
I think is foundational. It's more than everything else. It's the foundation, the duality, the foundational duality. And many people talk about it. Steve mentions Steve Wolfram. He also talk about that between our role in programming is to constrain all the variables that we can perceive into a symbol and use it to build. It's like an interaction with the myriads of things that we can't even access, but that are there, happening in nature. You always have that interplay of the macro and the micro. In this case, we are the micro. We look at symbols, at frames, at things that have gone many cycles to seem something. But we know that there is a lot going outside of us. And that is a general principle And if it's a general principle, it's true everywhere from when it started. So from when it started, you have macro, micro, always. So you have the only ability to go micro, macro, is the brain is relational. It's not material. It is imagined. And then the other one is the brain that build patterns, heuristics, and all these things from storing information. And the two always interact to allow us to do some tacking into a certain direction. Did it make sense what I said? Did it make sense? I like your feedback.
Oh, yeah.
I think it
Can
makes
you guys hear me? I'm having trouble with my computer tonight. Are you guys hearing me?
Yeah, I can hear you now.
Okay. So what's obvious here is you got utopia on the one side and oblivion on the other. Oh, utopia is a mind, is human beings using their mind to access design laws and generalized principles that govern regenerative processes. And the brain is conditioned old world dystopia, and it's stuck in the past, misinformed, running scared and stuck in the past. And it seems to me that it'd be really cool to have a chart there. Utopia is mind and regeneration, and oblivion is brain and being stuck in the past and being misinformed. That's what comes up for me. Anybody else?
Yes, I would like to make a comment on what you say, Steve, if nobody else has
Okay.
any.
Let's see. I think we're at, if you read. Richard, do you want to read tonight?
I think I forgot a comment.
Okay, my comment, because Steve say,
Richard, do you want to read tonight?
Yeah,
Can
I
you
can
guys
do
hear?
that.
Good.
Had a comment
Well, I'm
too.
in trouble with my, good, but make a comment. I prefer your comment. Go ahead.
okay, right. The thing that you've talked about outcomes, if I might understand my say, right? And I will say there are things, let's just take in a perspective that is much more local. There are a lot of things going on that go on whether I'm there or not, right? Consciousness is very personal. Consciousness is not generalized. Consciousness is from micro, from me, out. Now, if I am conscious and I take action to position myself, that is vectorial, that is towards the direction. There are outcomes, and one of two basic outcomes ultimately will be utopia for my experience, because there's no utopia for nature. There's either utopia for my experience or oblivion for my experience. And the two are exclusive. It can be one or the other. So because I've chosen direction, consistently a direction, it will lead me to some outcome, which is either good for my being or bad for my being. Good for my being is nirvana, utopia. Bad for my being is oblivion for me, meaning that the experimentation of putting me as a human being on this universe is going to end. Nature is going to end it. That's what I understood by this. Maybe I'm wrong, but I'm open to Steve had a point of view. I have another one here. It's always point of view with ifs. So we're here to understand clearer and progress together to the most extent we can.
Okay, Manu, I want to add something to what you're saying, because I really love that, what you just said. Because what I wanted to point out was that Bucky says it's eternally, he calls the universe an eternally regenerative universe. I love that because actually it doesn't matter whether we're here or not. It completely takes humanity out of the equation. Whether we're here or not, the universe is eternally regenerative. So when you said that it is my experience, right? So whether it is utopia or oblivion, it is literally for humanity. It's on us. The world, the universe doesn't care. It doesn't care. It will continue to regenerate long after we're gone. So I really putting that together is really powerful for me. Yeah. So thank you. I'm complete here. Steve?
I think Richard had something.
Yeah, I guess, yeah, I'm following up on the regenerative idea. Today, I was also part of our bi-weekly World Weavers group. And the whole question of the Gaia hypothesis came up, and it reintroduced me to the work of Elizabeth Sahtouris. And then I found a recent video that she's done, and it's all about the importance of dying to live. And so it really, to me, is not a binary sort of split between utopia or oblivion. It's really coming to grips with the idea that dying, as we see in nature, through the seasons and other sort of examples, is crucial to living. And Elizabeth was pointing out in this particular sort of video that if dying was not part of living, then living wouldn't happen. Living would come to an end. And so and she also talked about that the mind, I guess, in my mind, has been filled with knowledge from the elite or the knowledge keepers from science or wherever, that we have to become affiliated with some kind of an authority to give us direction and to manifest why we should do whatever we do. So it takes away from that sovereignty that you were just talking about, Steve, and puts it in the hands of some kind of authority, very often expressed in the form of a religious authority. And what Elizabeth, I think, was saying in vis-a-vis oblivion and utopia is that if we do not, and then the other part about the authorities, they try and create fear in us with respect to the whole experience of dying. And we're going to be saved, or some external body is going to save us from this fearful event. Where she's talking about it being a joyous event, it's an important event, it's something that we contribute to the universe, and we carry on beyond our physical death in ways perhaps that we don't really understand yet, but she's quite convinced that that's part of it. And so for me, it's dying, or being fearful of dying, and that regenerative nature of it is what's going to take us to oblivion. Embracing dying as part of living is what will take us in the direction of utopia. And utopia for me is simply a continued regeneration of what Bucky talks about in terms of universe. So that's my thoughts coming out of what we've said so far today, and what I was in dialogue with others earlier this morning. I'm complete.
I've just put on in the chat, Richard, in relation to what you say, is to say, when you're saying to die to live, it always referring to a higher dimension. It's not a dimension in which you live in. If you are talking about Richard Ramsey, that is not possible. But if you're talking about the Richard Ramsey family name, to die to live, there it is. Because it's always, as this guy was saying, Steve, I've just watched 20 minutes of that video we're talking about, but this notion is very clear, is that to understand something by programming, stacking on something, a symbol, this name, the symbol here being your family comes with a certain recurrence of things that are constrained and stabilized and building upon it and programming deep into it. Then I talk about to die to live. When I die, in actual fact, if I've succeeded in transmitting the values that are canonic and characteristic of this family to my child, I will have died to live. Because that idea will have continued. That's why I refer to dying to live is always, if we are talking here in this medium about dying to live, it's always in reference to a higher dimension. Right? It's symbolic. It's not our individual experience. So individually, we actually die, and we die and it's gone. That experience is finished. Is what we do with. Can we now remember that experience and put it, concatenate it into something else that continues as a pattern of that experience, a pattern of which that experience lives. So a pattern is always of a higher dimension because it comes after a cycle. It is a cycle repeating. Whereas my life now is just one cycle.
The only thing that I worry about when we talk about higher dimensions is that it can slip into a hierarchical notion. So in terms of trying to connect with Bucky's ideas of spheres and so forth, I would probably be more comfortable with thinking of higher dimension in that context as a outer dimension or a rippling kind of dimension that sort of spreads out, carries on, and perhaps it's a generalized principle too, that whether the knot that Bucky talked about that slides through a generalized principle, doesn't matter whether that knot is me alive physically as I am now, or me deceased, and whatever it is that I pass on to either my family or others, it carries on in that same general principle notion of being a local information gatherer and problem solver.
But you just talk about higher dimension, Richard.
No, I'm saying my worry about higher dimension is that it can turn into the notion of a hierarchy, so that there's some ultimate sort of authority, which is often expressed in godlike sort of language associated with particular faiths and that sort of thing. I think that it's more of a rippling and outer, and it's a more facilitative than it is authoritarian. And I think the brain, if we're talking about the brain being associated with oblivion, I think the brain has ended up being fed by a knowledge of our mortality in a way that it's created fear in many of us in terms of what that end of our living journey is all about, rather than seeing it as something that is going to continue on. Whether we talk about that in terms of a higher dimension, I'm just saying that I worry about the use of higher in the sense of the spherical, and I'm more comfortable with outer or the rippling sort of rings of dimension.
Can I just share something briefly and then we continue? I don't want to pick time. You see these two? That is a tetrahedron. That is an icosahedron. This is of dimension 1 in the space that we're talking about. This is of dimension 20. It's 20-fold of this. You can see it on the faces.
Yeah.
Okay?
Yeah.
It is the same, it is the same thing. And in order to have this has to appear many, many times. So when
No,
you're talking,
it only has
both,
to appear 12 times.
yes, both are spherical.
Yeah.
Both are spherical. I can put a sphere here, inside or outside, around it. Okay? So the notion of higher dimension refers to this. In that the context that you are talking about exceed the context of your experience life. And that's exactly what you described, Richard. So there shouldn't be confusion. Those who are confused are only those who are, I don't know, maybe religious or whatever, dogmatic about what dimension means. A dimension means always a degree of complexity. That's all it means. Okay, right. That's all I wanted to share. Okay.
Everybody see my screen?
Yeah.
No, I can't hear you, Steve. Steve, I can't hear you.
You could make it a little larger. It's at 135% right now, make it 145 or 50. It's a little bit larger. It would be a little bit larger. You guys, my internet keeps chopping out. And so I miss a key word here and there. And
Maybe even more.
yeah, you can even go more. I miss a key word here and there, and it's making it very difficult. I know there are multiple ways to look at dimensionality. And I understand Richard's point about some hierarchy, but I don't see dimensionality that way at all. I see dimensions of space and dimensions of time, and they exist in the cosmos. And I don't necessarily see a hierarchy, but I understand, Richard, your point of view, and I could see how some people might misstep from that. But so, you know, and I bet if we talked about it, we would identify some issues where it's really a concern and where there needs to be a paradigm shift. But in Bucky's context, I actually see the tetrahedron as 4 dimensions. There are 4 vectors there, 4 vertices, you know, 4 faces, and then you got the icosahedron with 20 faces. So I see the tetrahedron as 4 dimensions and the icosahedron as 20 dimensions. So a higher dimension. So and then we have, so, you know, and so it's about definition. I just thought I'd throw that out.
But Steve, the principle that to die to live, always to refer to something bigger than what we are living today, is a principle.
Okay.
It is not something that's limited to our experience just today. Is to say that our experience is part of something that continues, to die to live.
Okay, I'm not sure how that relates to multidimensionality. Or
Well,
to,
you can only say that because what you are talking about, it is more than your experience, your phase today. your face is going to be part of it. If your face is part of it, it means that you are a lower dimension. If Steve, living today, is part of the group of us today talking, Steve, you are of a lower dimension than our gathering today. In the context of what we're talking about here. Each of us is lower than what we're talking about. So the synergy of us is bigger than each of us individually, or even the sum of each of all the 5 of us in this meeting, including the 6th, Steve, which is muted here. I don't know.
Yeah. See, I see myself as everything and nothing simultaneously. When Bucky created his cosmic hierarchy, he puts the cosmos at the top, but he puts the symbol for the individual me as that symbol. It's like a fractal. It's like a hologram. I'm a hologram of the entire universe. So I'm not understanding your conversation about that at all. And we can continue the conversation, or we can continue to read. I'm open for either one. I think it's a good point of view. I think it's been inspiring, and I'm not sure that I think we'd be better served to continue to read, unless you think there's an important point that I'm missing.
No, I don't think otherwise. So we continue because
Okay.
we might be clarified further, or
Well,
just a point in relationship to
Yeah.
a statement made.
Cool. So I guess, so Richard, do you want to start reading from if you read the entire Critical Path book? Is that good?
Yeah, okay. If you read the entire Critical Path book carefully, including its sometimes long but essentially detailed considerations, and pay realistically close attention to these considerations, you will be able to throw your weight into the balancing of humanity's fate. While you could be the straw that breaks the camel's back, compressively, you can also be the straw or the straw of intellect, initiative, unselfishness, comprehensive integrity, competence, and love, whose ephemerally effective tension saves us. The invisible tents of straws that can save us are those of individual human integrities, in daring to steer the individual's course only by truth, strange as the realized truth may often seem, wherever and whenever the truths are evidenced to be the individual, wherever they may lead, unfamiliar as the way may be. The integrity of the individual's enthusiasm for the now possible success of all humanity is critical to successful exercise of our option. Are you spontaneously enthusiastic about everyone having everything you can have? For only a short time in most countries has the individual human had the right of trial by jury. To make humanity's chances for a fair trial better, all those testifying must swear to tell the truth, all the truth, and nothing but the truth. But humans have learned scientifically that the exact truth can never be attained or told. We can reduce the truth of tolerated error, but we have learned physically, as Heisenberg discovered, that exactitude is prohibited because most exquisite physical experiment has shown that that the act of measuring always alters that which is measured. We can sense that only God is the perfect, the exact truth. We can come ever nearer to God, but progressively eliminating residual errors. The nearest each of us can come to God is by loving the truth. If we don't program the computer truthfully, with all the truth and nothing but the truth, we won't get the answers that allow us to make it. When we speak of the integrity of the individual, we speak of that which life has taught the individual by direct experience. We are not talking about loyalty to your mother, to your friends, your college, your fraternity, or your boss, who told you how to behave or think. In speaking of the truth, we are talking about the position to take that seems to put you in the most favorable light.
Do we want to stop maybe there?
Sure.
I got a little bit of a question here. Is that I can see how we can, this idea we can continue to reduce the errors. But I don't know. I feel like the word truth is being used a little loosely here.
He's saying exact truth. He puts it's italic, the word exact in front of truth.
Right.
Is that loosely?
Well, no, can never be told.
Yeah.
I mean, yeah, I guess. I mean, but even I think, yeah, all right. Well, that's fair. Okay, good. Fair enough.
There is a subtlety here that I think has to be emphasized on. That is that fundamentally there is energy in motion, always in motion. And by the time, whatever you do, that you have a snapshot of that to look at is already in the past. So exact truth, if you want to have exact truth, that is you stopping the world. And that is in contradiction to a general principle that the world is always in tango moving. Also, for that, you have expressions like Heisenberg in physics that say a measurement always influences the result. So all you can do is to shorten the time between your measurement and reading the result in such a way that you are minimizing the error. That shortening of the time, Joe, is the error as defined scientifically. You define error by the gap between what you want and what you have, divide by what?
Manu, freeze.
I'd like to comment on this in terms of what I said earlier, and just playing with the idea that if I substituted the word God for and used universe, then what I get is that we can sense that only universe is the exact truth, and we can come ever nearer to universe or understanding universe by progressively eliminating residual errors. And that to me speaks to, we can always strive towards the horizon, but we will never, we'll get close, but we'll never reach it because the horizon keeps moving on us. So the nearest that each of us can come to a universe is by loving the truth. If we don't program the computer truthfully with all the truth and nothing but the truth, we won't get the answers that allow us to make it, if you want, in universe, or to be facilitated by universe, not directed by universe, not controlled by universe, but facilitated by the truth seeking in understanding universe. So just for me, if I substituted universe, used universe instead of God, then it removes the notion of hierarchy for me. It removes the notion of a thing, which is what most of us or a lot of us sort of manifest in the word God. And I use universe in that sense as the equivalent to what we often refer to as God. And that way universe facilitates, universe does not dictate. And we strive towards the closest truth we can get to the truth.
That is not scientific, Richard.
That is what?
It's not scientific.
What's not scientific?
Let me explain what I mean. You say you substitute God for universe.
No, he says
First.
he prefers not to substitute. He prefers to not refer to God. He prefers to refer to universe rather than God. Is that in
No,
fact?
he say, oh, see, let me go. Or otherwise, you take it and you do it.
Well, no,
You express it, and then I
I-
express what I want to mean.
I don't think Richard said that. Did Richard say that?
Richard is here.
No, I was
He say,
saying I use universe instead of God.
Yeah.
I was just trying, it was coming to me out of our earlier discussion, so it just, I tried the experiment of substituting a word or a name for another one.
all right.
Just
So
to
if you
see
say
what people
that,
think.
yes, if indeed you say that, let me continue here. First, God, in Bucky's parlance here, is the integrity. It is a relation. It is the integrity of that relation. God is the integrity of the eternal regenerative universe. That's what he called God. That is one. Second, universe is not fixed. Universe, as defined in that hierarchy, is the sum total of our experiences. The sum total of our experiences, never in a phase, but diverse as they are, creating a maze that expand and contract. Because there are many things that we think are true that will be disproved in the future because of experiences that we have that come in contradiction with what we previously considered as true. So that's why he's saying it's only individually your love for that pursuit of truth. That is something that can be tested all the time. And it is progressive. And it can be regressive in light of result of your testing. That will make us as humans have a chance to dent whatever our universe is. It is our universe that is utopia or oblivion. It is not the eternally regenerative universe, because we will never be. We only will be part of something that is the atoms or whatever that constitute me today, or that constitute the human species, will continue to be in something else when humans are not anymore there. And we know that there will be a point where humans are no more there in this form. I'm true.
Are you complete?
Yeah, I say so, yes.
Yeah.
Okay. Oh, you're through. I get it. Okay. Yeah, I think this, and I going back to Joe's point about the word truth being used kind of loosely. Well, as we're having this discussion, this thing came up for me. And so I'm just going to grab the screen here and share this guy right here. This was really powerful to me. In fact, when I first saw it, it only had 2 elements up here. And then I found it with the 3 elements up here. But, you know, this is, if there is a truth, this is it. But then as a human being looks at it based on their perspective, different things appear true based on the same truth. And these 3 people could go to war over whether or not this thing here is a square or a circle or a triangle. And it's all about perspective.
Right.
So, you know, it's very difficult to get to the exact truth. In fact, you know, I like the fact that Bucky refers to Heisenberg and the Heisenberg principle of uncertainty, and the whole idea they're still trying to discover. I mean, Stuart Hameroff and Roger Penrose are now arguing that it isn't observation that creates the collapse in the field to a particle. It is in fact consciousness that collapses that particle. And so, you know, I agree with this idea that truth is hard to find. That was my point there. And Joe, if you want to continue to share, just go back and share that thing. My stuff seems to be working. So, you know, maybe I can do it for a while. Joe, just be ready to take over at any given moment. But I don't remember where we were right now. I
know where we are. If you go down to
1927 is would be the
Oh.
next read.
right.
Okay, good. So who wants to read?
I can read.
Okay.
It was the 1927 realization of the foregoing that brought the author to reorganize his life to discover what, if anything, the little penniless unknown individual with dependent wife and child might be able to do effectively on behalf of all humanity that would be inherently impossible for great nations or great corporate enterprise to do. This occasioned what is described in my Self-Disciplines, Chapter 4. With world-around contact with youth, generated by invitations to speak to the students of over 500 universities and colleges during the last half-century, I can conclude at the outset of 1980 that the world public has become disenchanted with both the political and financial leadership, which it no longer trusts to solve the problems of historical crises. Furthermore, all the individuals of humanity are looking for the answer to what the little individual can do that can't be done by great nations and great enterprises. The author thought that it would be highly relevant to the purpose of this book to enumerate those self-disciplines that he had adopted and used during those 50 years. Only those self-disciplines can cogently explain why he adopted the design science revolution and not the political revolutions, the strategy of all history. Only by understanding those disciplines can we understand the strategy governing the development of the artifacts, which strategy is called critical path, ergo the name of this book. Critical path, each year I receive and answer many hundreds of unsolicited letters from youth anxious to know what the little individual can do. One such letter from a young man named Michael, who is 10 years old, asks whether I am a doer or a thinker. Although I never tell anyone what to do, I feel it quite relevant at this point to quote my letter to him explaining what I have been trying to do in adoption of 1927 inaugurated self-disciplinary resolves. The letter dated February 16th, 1970 reads, "Dear Michael, thank you very much for your recent letter concerning thinkers and doers. The things to do are the things that need doing, that you see need to be done, and that no one else seems to see need to be done. Then you will conceive your own way of doing that which needs to be done, that no one else has told you to do or how to do it. This will bring out the real you that often gets buried inside a character that has acquired a superficial array of behaviors induced or imposed by others on the individual. Try making experiments of anything you conceive and are intensively interested in. Don't be disappointed if something doesn't work out. That is what you want to know, the truth about everything. And then the truth about combinations of things. Some combinations have such logic and integrity that they can work coherently despite non-working elements embraced by their system. Whenever you come to a word with which you are not familiar, find it in the dictionary and write a sentence which uses that new word. Words are tools. And once you have learned how to use a tool, you will never forget it. just looking for the meaning of the word is not enough. If your vocabulary is comprehensive, you can comprehend both fine and large patterns of experience. You have what is most important in life, initiative. Because of it, you wrote to me. I am answering you to the best of my capability. You will find the world responding to your earnest initiative. Sincerely yours, Buckminster Fuller. The political and economic systems and the political and economic leaders of humanity are not in final examination. It is the integrity of each individual human that is in final examination. On personal integrity hangs humanity's fate. You can deceive others. You can deceive your brain self. You can't deceive your mind self. For mind deals only in the discovery of truth and the inner relationship of all the truths. The cosmic laws with which mind and deals are non-corruptible. Cosmic evolution is omniscient, omniscient. God comprehensively articulate.
Okay. Comments or questions on that one?
Omniscient, sorry.
Omniscient, yeah.
So sorry about that.
Okay. Any comments
I
or
think
questions?
you make it clear what final examination for individual is. And he said it clearly. Only one of the most powerful things that you have is that of initiative. Kelly would say decision. Initiative means that you decide something. You decide an angle of hearing. That's different from the mainstream. You question. And not only do you question, but you have to live and experiment the consequences of that questioning. That you try genuinely and honestly to experiment, that is to do. Right? So putting your money where your mouth is, doing it, experimenting, and drawing the conclusion. And some of those conclusions are going to invalidate some of the things that you had before or reinforce them. But it's an unceasing stuff. And they say if you do it, and you can only do it by having understood the general principles that stand above us, I would say, then you can do it, and then you can generally have a chance to throw your weight into the making of history. And when I say history, it's not your history. I'm talking about history of our universe, because our universe is a history book that is keep on in the making. It's a record of fact, of experiences, diverse in many directions, of many tweaking, of many questions that we as species, human, are cataloging to continue a cataloging of our experience. I'm true.
Okay. You're complete. Any other comments or questions?
I think the sentence that you highlighted was actually critical.
About the mind, the brain self?
The integrity.
Huh.
On personal integrity hangs humanity's fate.
Okay.
I think that that's fundamental. And initiative and integrity, I think, are both critical.
Yeah.
By the way, the reason I'm not going to go back to it. It was something about the word truth that was being used. The line I was focused on, you highlighted, but
The line you were focused on about truth, but where it says exact truth?
Yeah, it wasn't the exact truth. It was the computer being programmed with truth. That's the problem I had with that. I don't. if we don't program the computer truthfully with all the truth. That was the line that I really didn't necessarily.
The other thing that jumps out for me is the phrase that speaks to the truth and the interrelationships between truths. And
Right.
that surfaces for me the whole principle of tensegrity, with truth being sort of a compression element and the interrelationship of truths being the tension elements, and that you have those combined in a way that fosters the initiative and the integrity, as you were talking about, Joel. And I really think that the principle of tensegrity is underplayed and misunderstood or dismissed as something that is just a strange word that isn't all that important. I think it's really critical in terms of truth and interrelationships of truths.
And so, Richard, would you say that there is tension between seeing this object as a circle and the tension of seeing it as a square, and another tension of seeing it as a triangle, and there's tension? Is that a kind of?
Yeah, I mean, when I look at that now, the second time I see a tetrahedron immediately, and I see 6 interconnections. And so if each of those are true, as you said earlier, in terms of someone's either perception or the knowledge that they were taught, such as everything is solid or in a box, and we now commonly use the language of we have to think out of the box. Today we were talking about that concept and saying, if you limit it to thinking outside the box, then you are leaving the box as the foundation. The suggestion by some this morning was we have to remove the box. But nonetheless, when I see those, 1, 2, 3, 4 truths, if I also appreciate that there is 6 interconnections between those truths, then I am less inclined to become autocratic or single-minded in saying that my truth is the only truth.
Right. And I want to be clear on a point, because to me this is, I've had trouble coping with this word tensegrity, and in physics they always talk about tensors, and they talk about vectors, and they talk about different ways that objects relate in space. And for me, it was kind of like a little light went on for me when I correlated the idea of tensegrity as relative to the tension that exists between different aspects of the integrous thing. I have this thing with integrity, it has different aspects, and there's tension between those aspects. To me, that was kind of like a little light going on to help me understand the word tensegrity. And I am correct in using it that way, right, Richard? Or am I stretching things?
No, well, even when you use the language of stretching, that means, for me anyway, you're talking about the interrelationships. So maybe sometimes we stretch the truth of the square, if you want, a little too far away from the other truths, in order to try and accent it being the better truth. If we bring the tension elements too close together, then we run the risk again of the fusion of everybody has to be on exactly the same sort of track, and that all truths then sort of meld into one truth. I think what's difficult for us or for anybody is to think of that diagram just as you've got it there, and then draw the 6 interconnections, and to refer to what Fuller just said in the reading, that truths and the interrelationship between truths. So that's suggesting to me that there is no exact truth. There is no ultimate truth. There are interrelationships between many truths, perhaps. And when we buy into the understanding of the interrelationship, we then move away from being stuck in the notion of the binary that there cannot be more than one truth. So my truth must be better than your truth, rather than allowing our respective truths and then to really look at the interrelationship between them and the power that's in the interrelationship, and the strength that's in the interrelationship. And the strength, just as they show in the tensile strength of steel, is way more than the sum of the tensional strength in each of the elements. That's the exciting thing for me, is to, I mean, again, 1, 2, 3, 5 of us, and see the interconnections between 5 and the strength of that, that can come out of it, other than trying to argue that my way is better than your way, or your way is better than somebody else's way. Anyway, that's it gives me goosebumps when we really bring the notion of integrity into this living system understanding, which is what I think Fuller is all about. And I certainly think that's what we talk about in sessions like this, that excite us. And sometimes we get excited about slightly different things in the evening and come out of it saying, this has been a great evening. And yet my excitement may not be the same as your excitement, but together, the tensegrity or the interrelationships between all of us is what fed into and created my excitement. And it's individual to me in that sense. And yet it's an emergence of what's come out of the collective dialogue in the evening, or the day, depending on where each of us are.
Well, cool. And I
Can I
even,
say something?
yeah,
I'm feeling uneasy. Uneasy. A little bit by what we've been saying here. I'm not saying that as a critic, I'm just saying I'm feeling uneasy. And I will say something, I would like you to have your feedback. But look carefully to what I'm saying. This is compression. No, let me first say something. Universe is finite. This is compression. This is local. This is my local experience. Now, this compression become this that is tensionally expanded. Truth is the integrity of this. Tensegrity is tension, integrity. Do I move from here to here, keeping the integrity, the relational integrity of whatever regulate the whole of this? That's the way I understand it. It is always in tension and compression, but integrity without rupture. That is the continuity of universe. So universe is finite, but universe is infinitely divisible in a way that integrity is preserved. So if the phase of our experience as human disappears, something else will come in a place. That is the principle of substitutability of atoms or elements. It says that every 7 years, whatever is in this body is not what was, is different from what was 7 years earlier. So maybe an atom that was with Anne in Malaysia was now in Africa living in me. We don't know. But in the form that we have an experience. And we know that we are in universe. And we know that universe has continued, otherwise we wouldn't be here. So that's what my experience, my truth and your truth is only perspectives. But we know that is a generally regenerative universe, and that we are always pursuing what it is. And that is the essence of life. And because our pursuit is always lagging what is, we'll never know, we never come to experiment. Knowing scientifically means experimenting and repeating the experiment. We will never know the truth. The truth is God. The truth is universal. That's what we call truth. If we use the word, let's say so. So if we're using some other symbol, let's say my perspective is this, and that will make the language clearer. Really, we cannot say my truth. We can only say my view. And that's part of the personal integrity. And Bucky said here is that if you pay attention on what I say in critical path, and you really pay attention despite the fact that it is convoluted, it is complicated, he said it, we read it, not exactly the word that I'm saying, but he said it, then you will have a chance to throw your weight in the becoming of our experience. So you can only do that if you learn about general principles. And that's the why of education, educe all the time. You're always giving out. Educing means taking out from. And that is the why of the experiment. Read, question, experiment. And then validate or invalidate what was back before as something. And that is the only way we can go. That is the only experiment. That's the only tool that we have. We have no other tool. Everything else is just ideologies. The only method that we have that is verifiable is the scientific method. That is our technology. To try to perform what is. I rest my case.
I got to admit, I'm not sure what your case was. Do you feel easier? I want you to feel easy. You said you're feeling uneasy. You feel
I feel uneasy because I think that we run the risk on getting into, as a group here, religious or ideological or how do you call it? Subjective approaches to things. So if we have to want to feel and to go together, to progress and work together, we have to be objective, not subjective.
Well,
there will be subjectivity, but we have to try to put it in a perspective that allow objectivity to progress.
And at the same time, if we decide to do an experiment where we see which way, whether the water going down the drain circles clockwise or counterclockwise, you down there are going to have a different experience of me. And even though we're both doing the same experience, we're going to have completely different outcomes because of our space in the universe, because of our locality in the universe. And we can start a war over that if we want to. just
Yes.
because the your experiment has a different outcome than my experience does not mean that I'm being subjective. It means I'm being local. And that's why we get to work together and say, well, here's my experience and here's your experience. And that all creates tension, I think was Richard's point, and that creates the opportunity for integrity, right? I don't
That's
know.
exactly the word, Steve.
Huh?
Tension, integrity.
Yeah.
Tension, integrity means extension, expansion of a truth standing.
Yeah. And there is no
Tension,
expansion
integrity.
without contraction.
Yeah, meaning that you, where you have that experiment in the northern hemisphere, me having another experiment, another view in the southern hemisphere, we realize that it's part of the same thing.
Yeah, as long as we allow for the tensegrity to exist and not take our specific local point of view and push it onto somebody else.
Yeah, I mean, it's not even allowing, it exists without
Yeah,
us.
it exists. Okay, cool. And I just want to say one more thing about this because I'm having kind of some insight on this word tensegrity because there are a lot of aspects of it. But I'll tell you that for the last year or so, I've come to this idea that to define intention, I've worked with people and I say, well, do you, in experiencing object A, do you experience any tension? You know, is there, what is your relationship with money? What is your relationship with this person? Okay, there's some tension there. To resolve the intention, create an intention where I take that energy and I move to resolve it. That's my intention. I don't know. Somehow I've kind of used that as a little rhetorical, playful way to approach tension in relationships. So I just thought I would throw that out because for me, I'm having big epiphanies on this idea of tensegrity. And I'm coming out of a quantum string, you know, super heterotic string concept of tensegrity and tensors and vectors and putting a more of a colloquial context. That's all I'm saying. Cool. Any other thoughts or comments? And you seem to be ready to go. What's coming up for you?
No, actually, I was just pulling my thoughts together for when we end the day, you know, our last thoughts. So yes, that was what I
Okay.
was, yeah.
Well, we have a couple minutes to go here, and I'd like to. We started a little bit beyond the appointed time, so I'd like to continue for a while. And my computer seems to be working. Thanks. I came on with my phone, and thanks, Joe, for jumping in. And let's go back here. Now I forget. I highlighted that thing on computers.
We're in the next section,
Oh, that's right. We're starting part one.
part one.
Maybe we should start that next week, perhaps. Yeah.
Okay, maybe we can. This will just be a short meeting, so I'm okay with that. And because I admit when we start up next time, we're going to be getting into a big section with a big chunk. So this is a pretty good opportunity then just to break and see how we're going. And since you've got ready to go there, how are you feeling and what's your takeaway today?
Oh, okay. Yeah, because I'm looking at all the things we discussed today. I really, really appreciate that whole idea of dying to live and embracing dying is part of living, you know. That duality is sometimes something that we tend to forget because we're too busy trying to stay alive, you know. Yeah. So that's really highly appreciated. And you know, the whole discussion between Richard and Manu, yeah, I really like that because yeah, we have two sides. I mean, the duality of humanity, right? So you have the more scientific, the more factual, and the other is more the interpretive side of the human nature. So that whole idea of the higher dimension, that discussion, I thought was illuminating as well because Manu is really brilliant at explaining things and putting it down to very factual. No, let me rephrase that. It's very objective, you know, when you put into context exactly what somebody else is saying and versus what you know, the different meanings of terminology and concepts and so on. So I really appreciate that as well. And the other one is going away with that diagram of truth, we talk about it all the time, where we have the elephant and, different people seeing different parts of the elephant, or the six blind people, right? Feeling different things. Us with vision also fall into that trap of seeing only one part of the whole, the whole part of the whole, right? And again, Manu, just now what you said was, it's better to say, or rather, the truth is more like it's my perception, my view, rather than my truth, because my truth may be different because of where we are localized. There's a lot to take away from this. Yeah. So thank you very much. And yes, Joe, how do you feel, and what is your takeaway?
Feel very fortunate to be here this evening. I appreciate everybody's input, and just thinking about the word truth. I know Steve and I have actually had a lot of discussions about this in the past, and actually he's kind of used the example of similarly to the one that he used this evening, how our perspectives may change based on a local experience. And that rings true for me. I think about that quite often. I think about, I have kind of an interesting background in that I have a provincial perspective, and I also have a kind of a lot of other experiences as well. So, so I can understand that. I think one of the most important things is that we can talk about is initiative, integrity, and I'd say another thing in there. Actually, I would add one more thing: is that intentional. Being intentional with our actions. I think that we can take initiative a lot of times, and I think that kind of will get us started. I liked how Bucky wrote that letter saying, "Look up a word if you don't know what it means." Just something as simple as that. The initiative that the student took to writing Bucky. I think those are important things, and how our personal integrity is important. But I also think that really being intentional is actually maybe cognitively thinking about what actions we're actually taking and what actions we can take, as on a personal level. And that gets back to some personal responsibility aspects of this. I know I'm a little bit abstract this evening, but that's my takeaway for the most part. There's other aspects of it too, when we get that back to the idea of exact truth and Heisenberg's principle. I firmly agree with Bucky's perspectives on that. Again, the programming of the computer kind of threw me off a little bit, so I'll have to go back and look at that. And so I appreciate you sending me the Word document so I can look back over that, Steve. So I appreciate everybody's input this evening. It's great. Great dialogue. So Manu, how are you feeling? What were you taking away from today?
I feel happy. I feel that we have progress. Just by the fact that we seem to have different perspectives, and then we put them on the table and we discuss them. It's not smooth, and it will never be smooth. When it's smooth, expect Murphy's Law. So to me, that is one big thing. But what really struck me today is the sentence, and I want to take the time to read it. If you read the entire Critical Path book carefully, included is sometimes long but essentially detailed considerations, and pay realistically close attention to these considerations, you will be able to throw your weight into the balancing of humanity faith. It is, you make your best effort to understand general principles. The general principles are the laws of the universe. We can only submit to them because we are in universe. We're not outside of universe. We are experiencing universe from inside. You can't experience, you can't be saying that you stay in a house and you see, and then you saw the rafter of a roof of a house. It's going to collapse on you. The second thing that is say, we can sense that only God is perfect, that only order is perfect, that only integrity is perfect, that only tensegrity is perfect. The exact truth, we can come ever nearer to God by progressively eliminating residual errors by the scientific approach. That's what it means. Progressively eliminating residual errors is by scientific approach. Error can only come by repeating some experiment, that you see what if there is gap between the result that you get under the same experimental conditions. And if over and over that result is getting smaller, we are progressing, we are approaching Veritas. And the nearest each of us can come to God is by loving truth. It can only be metaphysical. So we have love, and we approach everything with love. And then say that love requires of us to program the computer. Remember, computer is garbage in, garbage out, nothing else. I repeat again, computer is the ability to divide faster and to throw out faster.
Right.
So if we program the computer, that is our experience and our perspective of life, with garbage, we're going to have garbage out. But if we program with what we sincerely experience as truth, then there is a chance, a better chance that what comes out is something that is also aligned with truth, with the principle. Right? It's like wanting to live, but waging war is a contradiction. You're going to die. So those are the big things. And then you say, when we speak of the integrity of the individual, we speak of that which life has taught the individual by direct experience. There is no other thing than the what you call design. Is only by design. We are inside some cocoon or something, and we have to use whatever is in our disposition, at our disposition, to design the future. And therefore, people like Anne, entrepreneurial. Mm-hmm. Entrepreneurship should be part of our culture. It should be what we are for, not ideology, which has been what we had in the 20th century of putting people in a classroom and forcing them into the same thing.
Yeah.
Okay, so those are the things that I take away from here. That is the essence of Critical Path. That is the why we spend so much time in these meetings discussing. It is precious time. But for 15 years now, we've been trying to understand and to apply. It took Bucky 50 years. I don't know if people realize it. Bucky documenting of his experiments took him 20 years. He has his epiphany when he was 26, when he was attempting suicide. He took the resolution to dutifully record all of the experience and then try to see if there are some principles that can be induced, that can come out from that. And he published most of his book when he was like 70. You take Critical Path, you take The Grunge of Giants, you take many books that are really comprehensive of Bucky. Even Synergetics, because he never finished Synergetics. Synergetics 2 was published posthumously. So he did it, had that experience. It's hard knock schools. And he came out with what we're using it today as his legacy. That is, he died for us to live. That was love. It can only be a labor of love. So there's a price to pay by pursuing love, which you can pay by your life. So that's what I take away from here. It is powerful. Again, thank you all for really being patient with me. You know, sometimes when I get really excited, I can be very sharp in cutting people and very uncouth. I apologize for that. On this, Richard, how do you feel? What do you take away?
I feel very good. I feel very good about what you just said, because that's exactly what happens from time to time, is that when any one of us gets too much on what we think is right, and we reinforce it very often by completing a statement and then saying right, as if we all have to agree. And I really appreciate the difference between discussion and dialogue. And I see this as always in the spirit of dialogue. And so it's bringing those intertensions together in such a way that something may arise out of that neither one of us thought about or had a position on when we entered into the dialogue. What I took away from tonight was two things, really. One was the diagram. It didn't hit me until I saw it for the second time, the four truths. And when I saw those four truths the first time, all I saw was four things, four entities. Second time, I saw the invisible interconnections because they're not there. They could be drawn in, but they're not there. So for the most part, we would probably gravitate to whichever of those truths we thought was the right one. So I would like to see more dialogue that involves that diagram, but with the interconnections of those truths being talked about. And the other thing that I really liked in that context was the notion of intentional. Now, I heard the word intentional in the traditional way of intentional, intentional. I also heard it intentional, intentional. And it was the latter that really struck me, because I think intentional, it gets us to talking and thinking about what's going on between those entities, whatever the entities are. So I really cherish the takeaway from those two inserts into our dialogue tonight. And of course, Bucky's words for me that really struck me were the notion of the truths and the interrelationship between truths. They all tied together for me. So thank you very much. This was a great takeaway for me tonight.
Steve.
So over to Steve and how you feel and your takeaway from this evening.
Well, I'm real delighted that my computer stopped acting up. It was the first third of this meeting tonight. I was hearing only about at least missing every third word, and it was really difficult for me to keep up with what was going on. And I thank Joe for receiving my email and being ready to take over, and took over for a little bit of time. So that's really cool. I've kind of shared already. I've had this big kind of an insight in terms of the idea of tensegrity, and then again, Richard, what you just shared about intentional and intentional, and which I kind of talked about when I talked about inner tension and intention, and I wrote those down. Now I'm gonna have to look at all of that here one more time. So the words are really, really powerful. I do agree that as we have experiments, the goal of each experiment is to get the margin of error smaller and smaller each time. And it's very important to then, in contrast to that, consider direct experience of each individual as they're doing that experiment. What is it they're doing slightly different than somebody else to create some different results? And I can just call you an idiot because your experiment didn't have the same outcome of mine did, or we can look closely together and see how you did yours differently, or what spot on the planet you're on. Maybe there's some element of physics involved here that's affecting the outcome. And it's not just that you're an idiot or I'm an idiot. It's the fact is we're both geniuses, and there's a system we're working in. And the tension between us can help us understand the system if we're willing to look outside of that, look at something bigger. So I thought that was really cool. I got something here with Bucky when he talked the letter to Michael, where he said, look up a word and write a sentence. I hadn't thought of writing a sentence. I think that's really cool, but I have a 5-step process I have for words, because I've been thinking about this, and I've actually been teaching it. You see a word, look it up. I hadn't used it in a sentence before in a formal step, but what I have invited people to do is to take that word then and look up other words relative to it. There are a lot of times there are words that are just very, very, either sometimes they mean the same, but if we look at the definitions, there's some subtle different manifestations of definition in those different words. I wish I had a couple of examples to throw up where I've got a word, then I listed some synonyms, and then noticed how the synonyms were each slightly different. And that those differences can make a big difference in terms of the outcome of the word and the use of the word. And then what I challenge people to do is to pick their best word and then go out in their community and ask and test the word. What does this word mean to you? And I've told people in my trainings, I've said, look, come up with the best definition for you, figure out what works in your community, and figure out you might want to use the words 2 different ways. Because you might find a word that has a specific meaning for you that actually creates a shift, an energy shift in your body. Whereas the slightly different word seems to communicate more of that feeling in the community. But don't leave yourself behind. Stay in your own tension with the word. I love this idea of tensegrity and this idea of tension and tensors. That tension is what creates the, it's the energy vector that brings to an outcome. So I've got a bunch of notes here, and I don't know if any of that meant anything to you, but it certainly meant something to me. And I love the idea of the interconnection being tensions. I never thought about that. But Bucky talks about, the tetrahedron, when he goes A, B, C, D as the 4 vertices on the tetrahedron, then he has these 6 little lines going around, these loops going around interconnecting the A, B, C, D. And those interconnections are a function of mind, and the 4 dots are a function of experience and brain. And how the interconnections are tensors, that was big time for me tonight. I'm going to look at that a little bit more deeply. So anyway, yeah, I'm so glad I made it tonight. And I feel bad for anybody who didn't make it. And I'm just grateful for that everybody puts their hearts and minds into these calls and makes them work as well as they do.
Has anybody heard from Susan?
What's that?
Has anybody heard from Susan?
There's a note in the chat that Manu heard from Bucky, from Kelly though.
Yeah, I did see that. That was.
Yeah, that's pretty cool. So that means he's functioning.
I'm putting something in the chat. If you just allow me a minute, I'll put it, and then I think
Okay.
it's quite interesting. Just continue discussion.
Yeah, wasn't Susan traveling this weekend again? I think she might have been traveling this weekend again.
I don't know, but I just, yeah, I'm a little worried because usually we get a text or something, that's all.
Yeah. Yeah, I'll check my text right now. I don't have any text from her, so life is good. And we'll wait for, if you guys want to leave, that's okay. And if you want to wait for Manu to put his chat in there, I won't turn off the recording or the workshop until he posts that. And then, so it'll be there, but we can all wait a minute. Anybody else want to say anything anything else you thought of in your takeaways?
There was something that when it was brought up, it's not coming to me right now because I got distracted by your tensor comment. Because I started looking up tensors and stuff like that. And I just.
Can you read that? Does it make sense? I was trying to take down notes yesterday. It was Stephen Wolfram who was in conversation with Lex Friedman. And he says, we are nature's observers and computationally bounded. Because he was saying that nature is always unconstrained computationally, is doing things. A lot of things are happening, a lot of happenings. And then we are looking to bound our observation, to observe, to bound, and then compute. We call it concatenating, computation. They say, so we are looking at things that are reducible. We are compressing we are extracting some kind of symbol, essence of what's the detail of what is going on in the world. We believe we are persistent in time. What do you think of that?
I don't see it in the chat, Manu.
I don't see it either.
How can you not see? I put it there. Everybody has seen. Are you seeing it?
Well,
Did you
can
see
you see it?
Yeah, but I can see it.
You can see it?
Yeah, I can see it.
in the
I
chat?
can't see it.
Yeah.
I mean, you are programming your computer, man.
Richard, do you see it in your chat? That is the strangest thing.
Okay, let me copy it and repost it now. I copy.
Manu, what is it that stood out for you? What for this when you posted this, right? You chose to share this with us. Can you all see it now? Manu has posted it again.
I'm not seeing it.
Manu, are you
I don't know what
posting
you've
it to
done of your computer. I posted to everybody.
It says
Mm.
Manu to everyone, right? You to everyone, right?
Yes.
Yes.
It's not showing up here, dude.
I don't know, but it is in the stuff. Anne is seeing it, I'm seeing it. I don't know what is happening in North America.
Well,
So
you send it to me email?
we are in the south. So you guys are in the northern hemisphere. I don't know what is happening to your computers.
Fair
Was
enough.
from that conversation, Steve, between Lex Friedman and Steve Wolfram about ChatGPT and the nature of truth, reality, and computation.
That's a great podcast.
Yes.
So
And then this is one of the notes that I put down. I've started listening to it. And this is quite important because it's saying that nature is at work. There are so many things that are happening. So complex, we cannot compute them. Nature is in unconstrained computation. The way we learn, even artificially, is by constraining. And when you constrain, you have patterns. And you can take those patterns now, that is a pattern of organized energy. That's what the pattern is, because it's bounded, it's organized. We can take it now and use it symbolically for computing. And therefore have a glimpse of approaching via computation, reality, truth. So our experience is always we're trying to develop technologies, techniques that allow us to induce, that is to generalize our personal experience to the extent that we can. And we do it by exchanging, by communicating, and by the putting that into tension. That is, tension to me, and it comes to the geometry, is expanding the domain of validity of something. That come mechanically in physics is an expansion. I was true in what was my geometry, local as a tetrahedron. Can my experiment and my experience still be true when I expand to the icosahedron, or when I expand to the octahedron, before even talking about the icosahedron? That's the way I understand it. Because that universe never ceased to exist. It always exists. What we are expanding is my local experience to broaden our understanding, and so that we can sync our actions, which we are the vertexes of universe. I don't know if Steve will agree to that. We as humans are some of the vertexes of a complex of universe.
I totally agree with that. I'm a
Okay.
vertex. I'm a fractal.
Yes.
I'm a fractal.
Yeah. So in that experiment, we are influencing each other. Does our macro influence as a body of human, is it still in sync with what is going on naturally, in a way that we stand a chance to die for living, as Richard said? Can our generation die for the living of a better living of next generation? That is what you call utopia. Our generation died for next generation to live better than what we had. And if we do that continuously, it is regenerative. That's the very definition of what you call regenerative. So regenerative can also be regenerative to die, because it follows exponential laws. In that if we do the bad things, we compute, because that our computer, our lives is a computer. We constantly feeding our social computer with input of our perspective and our experiment. If there are wrong inputs, it's going to spew out things that are harmful to us. Like, what are we doing of the environment in which we live? It might become progressively toxic to the survival of our humanity, but something else will live. Maybe plants, it will become a huge green planet or something of the sort. Right? That's it.
Okay, so
Thank you.
somehow your post, Manu, came up in my phone, but it's not coming up on my computer. Joe, is it coming up on your computer?
It is not.
How
Okay,
about-
I'm going to copy the chat and I'm going to send it on email.
Good. So
Okay.
then- and I have it here. I have screenshot it. So if you send it on email, that'll be really good, because it'll make me easy to copy and paste.
Yes.
And I think part of the screw up is this computer, and I'm on with both my phone and the computer. And I think that could be part of the problem. Richard, do you see his post on your chat? Okay, that is really
No, worry not. I've saved the chat. After our talk here, I'll just copy the text and then I put it in an email to everybody here.
okay. Thank you. That'll be perfect.
Doesn't work with that, then we got real problems.
Yeah, that's exactly right.
Right.
All right, everybody, we'll see you next week.
Hey,
Yep.
good.
Thank you, Steve.
Safe
Continue posting. Very interesting.
All right, good.
Sometimes we don't watch, but when we watch, it's always of great interest.
Very good. Thank you. Bye-bye.
Take care, everyone.
Bye.
Bye.